Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of The Cycle. I'm your host, Melissa, and I am joined by our guest today, Kelsey. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Oh, we're so happy to chat with you and learn more about you. And, with that being said, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I am born and raised Southern California girl, lived in Europe for about 10 years, and I'll get into that because that comes up in my endo story and diagnosis and everything like that. Moved back a few years ago, went back to grad school to become a mental health therapist. And so now I'm seeing clients, mostly working with women and couples, families too. Everything from relational issues to women managing chronic pain like endo or PMDD, PCOS, that kind of stuff, and all of the emotional lifestyle disruption that comes up with it. As far as personal life, I love to surf and be in the ocean. And I love making art as well. I'm really into pottery and, film photography, things like that. And I spend a lot of time with friends and family and, try to maintain a good balance. Living with a chronic health condition is not always easy, but has gotten better and more manageable over time. So I'll leave that there. Hopefully that's
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It sounds like a very nice, good balance. And it was funny, I was giving Kelsey examples before the show of like cool things that maybe she could say. And I was like, oh, surfing, as I just guessed, because Southern California, for people who are listening and have never been to Southern California, you will just drive down the coast and see people surfing all the time. So I use the example of surfing. Didn't even know that Kelsey surfs. So that surfing's just so cool. And it's just nice to be out on the water. Probably just so relaxing.
Yeah. Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, not always relaxing. Sometimes it's
Well,
a little
yeah,
intense, but most of the time it's relaxing. And we do drive down the coast all the time and just look for waves and surf. That is a real thing.
I love it. I love it. It's like a movie. It's like a
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, having balance, having chronic illness. We know you have endo. You're here to share your journey with us. So when did you start to come on this path of endo?
Yeah. So from a very early age, I started getting really bad period cramps, and I was a competitive soccer player. So I played a really high level of sports through college as well, Division 1 soccer, and I was prescribed opiates to help manage my period pain from a very young age, 14 or 15, and ultimately did not take them. But I went on hormonal birth control pills to try to just like mitigate and suppress the cycle. Once I went off of those after about 10 years in my mid 20s, I just started experiencing a lot more pain and mood issues and stuff like that. And I got really curious. I was like, what's going on here? And started doing a lot of testing. And ultimately, in 2021, that's when I had my endo surgery. But it took a long time to figure out, what was really going on. But I started to notice symptoms really early on. Yeah.
Yeah, and what were some of the like symptoms that you were experiencing that maybe even like put the birth control kind of in your path?
Yeah. I mean, probably just really heavy periods, heavy painful periods, a lot of like nausea and GI issues too with the periods. I think I probably always had like some kind of PMDD, which for listeners, if you're not familiar with it, it's premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is an intense extreme form of PMS. And it kind of just goes way past PMS because it's incredibly disruptive in women's lives. Like it's really hard to go to school or to work. There's a lot of mood disruption, relational issues, things like that. And there's a like complex mechanisms going on, but basically in the luteal phase, like second part of the cycle, right before your period, there's like the extreme form of PMS. There's not a biological link yet with endo, but those things often co-occur. And I think for me, that probably would have been one of the bigger telltale signs that I have like really different experiences of myself and my life at different points of the cycle. So yeah, those are a few of the main things that pointed to
That you
endo.
started to notice, right? And then when you were on the birth control, like through high school and like you mentioned into your 20s, do you feel like it helped?
It probably helped with the period pain, right? Because it suppresses the cycle. But I think I've, spoken to a lot of women about this, like both in a therapeutical context and also friends and people who have endo, just contacts and everything like that. And a lot of times you feel kind of like a shadow of yourself. It really suppresses your hormones as a woman. And those are really important to how we feel and how we experience ourselves in our lives. And I just started to realize that was not for me. And I was, felt kind of like a different person on those hormonal birth control pills. So I wanted to handle things more naturally, which is what I do now. But it's taken a lot of trial and error to kind of figure that out. Whereas the hormonal birth control pill or the spiral or I think there's like something you can inject in your arm too. All those methods can be helpful for suppressing the cycle. And I think some women find a lot of relief in them. I just had to kind of weigh the pros and cons and ultimately decided that wasn't for me.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point of like a shadow of yourself, but even just in high school and at those young ages where your hormones are still like getting their way out, and then you're adding more on top. It is challenging, but I do feel like it does help some people at least get through and first line of defense. And I was very much like you, where like at some point I was like, I don't know that I want to be on this, and I don't feel great on it. And it was mostly mentally, I didn't feel great on it. I just I didn't feel like myself. Okay, so you stop this, you said, you get the diagnosis. How did you get there? You did a lot of research. Did you see any medical professional that ever mentioned endo, or did you kind of figure it out on your own and go to them?
I figured it out kind of on my own and then went to them to get it confirmed and to get like proper care. Mm-hmm. I think I was home for a visit because I was living in Europe at the time. I was home for a visit and things had gotten really bad over the last year or so. I think this was 2020 around COVID time, and increased stress, all of that, isolation. Yeah. So that probably made things a bit worse. And so I was doing a lot of testing at the time, came home for a visit to California, and my mom actually saw me and she saw how much pain I was in like every day and also around my period. I was home for a couple of weeks and she was like, Kelsey, this is not okay. Like, I really want you to go see a doctor here, a specialist. And I just kind of by happenstance ended up with a midwife who had an appointment while I was still home. She was like, I don't know much about, because I told her, I was like, I've been reading a lot. I've been cycle tracking and all of that. And I do think that I probably have endo, but I don't really know what to do. And she was like, I can't really help you, but there's this really great, specialized pelvic PT that's close by. You should try to get in with them and see what they can do. And on my first visit with them, immediately the pelvic PT was like, I really think that you have endo. It's very high odds and, you can get a surgery and this will help a lot and all of that. So then I think within 2 months or so, I had the surgery after that. So that was the first time that, a doctor looked me in the eye and was like, yeah, you probably have endo. And that was incredibly validating because I had been through years of research and I think most women, unfortunately, like I've led therapeutic support groups with women who have endo or PMDD. And like most women say the same thing, that it's just so many years spanning that, the doctors just keep looking at you and saying like, you're fine. Like you probably just have IBS or you have, PMS or period pain, like take some more naproxen, do these like Band-Aid things. And it's like, no, like something's really off here. And to finally get someone to say like in a position of power, as I would say, like really clinically, but like someone to really say like, look, there's something wrong here. This is the diagnosis, the treatment plan, this is what we can do to help you, was incredibly validating and like life-changing.
Yeah. And so great of your mom to like call it out and call it out to you, because I feel like sometimes we just learn to cope and it's just your new normal and you don't realize like maybe how intense it is. And I'm happy that you mentioned like it started to be pain all the time. It wasn't just around your cycle, like it becomes something that is almost a daily occurrence.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's not okay. Yeah, we have to advocate for ourselves, and sometimes that's really hard, like it feels, fortunately, like I am quite privileged that, I grew up in California where the medical care is a certain way and that I was able to pay for, like specialized care, like to go to a pelvic PT out of network and things like that. And so many women don't have that same opportunity. And I was like raised in a certain way to advocate for myself and speak up. And for a lot of women, that's not something that we're trained to do, right? We're trained to be a certain way in our culture. Yes. And that can kind of like make things extra challenging when it comes to trying to fight for a diagnosis, which we shouldn't have to be doing.
So you have the surgery, they diagnose you with endo. How do you feel after that? What happens? How did the surgery go?
Yeah, that was about 5 years ago now, almost exactly. It was May 2021, 5-year anniversary.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I don't know. I think, I can't really say if it was more helpful or not. I mean, I think after it was a longer recovery than I had expected. And it took me probably 6 months to start feeling better. And I know they tell you after that you should feel good after a couple of weeks. And yeah, it was, which I think is like, why?
The 2 weeks is not possible.
No, I'm like, what sample
Yeah.
size is that? Like, who is recovering that quickly after surgery of that? And like the endo surgeries vary so much. I had my appendix taken out. I had endo like all over most of my major organs, and so it was a long recovery. And I think that was disappointing. I kind of felt like I was told I would start feeling better pretty soon, and I wasn't. I felt like I got worse for a while and then slowly got better. And I was in the Netherlands recovering at the time. So I was working with, what's she called? An osteopath. And then I worked with pelvic PT when I moved back here, and still see my pelvic PT really like regularly, and, find that, yeah, it's a constant thing. I feel like being in recovery from this, and like working through this, and lifestyle stuff for me is the biggest one. Managing stress and eating patterns and like getting enough sleep. It's a full picture. And I think probably the biggest thing for me, I was like reflecting before coming on here today of like what I want to tell for my story, because I am a narrative therapist. I've been trained as a narrative therapist, which just basically means of like, how we tell our stories and what stories we circulate are really important. And being trained this way has been just really therapeutic and interesting for me to reflect on like what stories I'm telling about my health condition. And like, I used to have this story of I'm sick and this is just how I am, and it sucks that I can't like drink alcohol like my friends, or I can't be like a normal 30-year-old, and I can't eat like all these kinds of foods. I can't go out and eat like a bunch of French fries or have a bunch of beers or something like that. There was a lot of grief around like, I can't do those things because I'm going to feel a lot worse. And so, I've just been reflecting a lot in the last few years of like my stories around having endo. And in some ways it is kind of like a gift that I know so well what my body is up to, and reflect so much on how to take care of myself in the way that like another 34-year-old might not have lived experience of how to do yet, and that maybe they have to encounter that 10 years from now or 20 years from now when they're going through menopause. And my friends are always tapping my shoulder of like, hey Kelsey, I've got this like ailment, or like I'm struggling with this, like a women's health thing, like what do you know about that? What teas can I drink? What tincture can I take? Or what kind of foods would you recommend? And like I've just learned so much about how to care for myself in a particular way. Sometimes that can be frustrating because I have to say no to certain things. But yeah, over time, it's a very deep knowing that I've found for myself in my life and what's going to work for me.
Yeah, I think that's so beautifully said, and saying like almost the grief and like mourning that you can't maybe do the same things that your friends can do or things like that. It is still very hard. And the people who don't understand it either, it makes it really challenging too, because some people just don't have the empathy, because it's not that they don't want to, it's that they really don't understand what it's like to be in that position. And you mentioned a lot of like lifestyle changes and things like that. I'd love to hear some of those things, or the things that you do kind of on ritual to keep yourself in a good space.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely happy to share. And I will say that it's like constant trial and error.
Yes.
Yeah, like, right.
And some weeks it may work and other weeks it doesn't. So, it's
Yeah,
all an
yeah.
experiment.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I used to just pop so many painkillers on my period, and now I actually have it even right here. I take cran bark. It's a tincture you can get at Sprouts. This is like, I don't know if you know it, but it's the best thing for period pain. It just helps relieve uterine contractions, and you don't have like any of the weird side effects that you get from naproxen or Advil or acetaminophen, stuff like that. So that for period pain has been an absolute game changer. I've been working with an acupuncturist now for about a year, and that has helped a lot just, relax my nervous system a bit, and my periods are just so much more manageable. They're not as heavy, they're not as long, as painful, and it's just like these little baby steps. And So that those things are really helpful. Raspberry leaf tea on your period is really good. I also, I navigate like pretty intense PMDD. And I will say like pretty intense because I know women have it like a much more intense experience than I do. So for PMDD, I do take 5-HTP, which is like it's been researched that it can be really effective towards managing like depression and low mood and things like that without as many side effects as like an SSRI, something like that. And you can take it as a supplement. You can take it in your luteal phase, or you can take it around the cycle. I take that. It helps with sleep as well. I've just found that really helpful for my mood, especially like the PMDD time where things get a little bit tougher. What else? Sleep is huge. Just making sure I get enough rest, not much like alcohol, that's a big one because it's so socialized. What else do I do? I eat a mostly vegan diet and I eat some fish, some chicken. That's still trial and error for me. I don't have that totally like right yet, but I do find like avoiding dairy and eggs and like gluten is okay, but just not that much, but just mostly like a whole foods diet. I lived in Spain for a long time, like 6 years or so. And so I really love a Mediterranean diet with like lots of fresh things and keeping things like very, just simple and delicious and like eating. I find that the relational stuff for endo and PMDD symptoms is like really important in throughout periods when I'm having more pain or my like PMDD is showing up. I find that like just not isolating myself and spending more time with friends and family is really helpful. So I know that when we have a lot of pain as like women with endo, we like sometimes need to like curl up in a ball with our heating pad and all of that. I have just found that like sometimes really high intensity exercise and spending time with like a really close friend or a close family member is just like really helpful. Get out of your head and like out of your body a little bit. Shake things up and not be so isolated has just helped me a lot. I know that was a lot, but
no, those are all very helpful, super helpful. And I love the idea of like spending time with someone or something when you're not in like the best place. Cause you're right. Like I feel like we retreat with our heating pads and be like,
yeah.
dark room, like leave me alone because I'm in so much pain. But yeah, even like maybe a short walk with a friend or something like that, even though it seems like it's not possible. I mean, there are some times where it's really not possible, but when you're feeling a little bit better, just getting out to getting some fresh air and
Yeah.
it does help. It really does help. And yeah, even some gentle stretching or something like that. But yeah, I think those are all super helpful tips. So, how have the past, you've had the surgery the past 5 years? It sounds like you're doing a lot of these other things too, which are really helping. So, the past 5 years, how have you been?
Yeah.
Ups and downs, flares here and there?
Yeah, I would say lots of ups and downs. I think that our lives change and that impacts us, right? Like I went through a really challenging breakup and that really shook me. It was a really long relationship, 10 years, we were married. And I think that just for a couple of years, like was really challenging, messed with my nervous system and like just kind of recalibrating relationships and all of that. And, I think that our stress levels and our emotions like impact our pain and everything that we feel. And that's just kind of how it goes. So I would say it's been like lots of ups and downs, lots of changes in my life. I went back to grad school, of course, like, breakup. There have been a lot of positive, beautiful things too, like new friendships, new relationships, changing where I'm living and all of that. So I would just say like ups and downs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you moved home from Europe and Spain. Oh my gosh, I need the tea. And living there for 6 years, it was probably so amazing, and just the food and the landscape and all of that sounds beautiful. And I'm so sorry about what you went through with your breakup. It sounds like that was probably very challenging. But you went back, so you come back to California. You go to grad school. Why did you decide to do this? Probably, I'm guessing you're going to say from your lived experience, but I'm love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, having endo was the primary driver for me to go back to school to become a therapist because, while I loved my therapist while I was living over in Europe, I saw her for a long time. I found that, like there's so much injustice in the medical system and I like really wanted to be that support for a woman that has like a chronic health condition. You know, I wouldn't say it's a small part of my work now. I do see women that have like endo, PCOS, all of that. It's just, I see like such a broad spectrum of stuff, including people going through breakups and navigating like grief and loss and all of that. But there is something really specific about connecting with another woman who has that shared lived experience, because I think, you know, something I wanted to add from the last question was there's like safe, for lack of better words, like there's like safe people that we can talk to about certain things that we know that they're going to meet us in a certain way. And like, I would not even advocate for women that have endo to be talking to everyone in their life about it, because they might be met in a certain way that's, you know, with a potential judgment, or that they have to over-explain themselves. I talk really selectively about endo with friends. Like I have a very dear close friend that has endo as well. We talk about it sometimes, but I don't want it to take up so much space in all of my relationships. And there's certain people that are important in my life that I don't really feel the need to talk to them about it, or like that they need that window into my life. And that's okay. I think it's maybe we have some ideas or preconceptions that we should talk to like our loved and important people about this, like in great detail. And I would just say that's not necessarily the case. There's spaces that are going to be more supportive, and I've held a couple of like endo support groups, and spaces like that are really beautiful, that we can all come together and share our experience, because it is really unique and not everyone's going to understand. Yeah.
I think that's really well said and beautifully said. And thank you for the work that you're doing to help people that are going through this, because it really is a lot. There's so many like facets, like you said. I mean, it's just from the medical, maybe some people not listening, and the gaslighting, and just people maybe in your family not understanding, or you're in a relationship and your partner doesn't understand, and people think you're faking it or making it up. And that's really hard on you as the individual who's also bearing the brunt of having the chronic illness. So there's just so many layers to it. And I agree with you. Like, there's a group like text that I have where I don't have to like really say anything. I can just be like, I'm in it, I'm going through it, where you don't even have to maybe explain it, because they all have endo too and they understand.
Right.
And they can be supportive, but you don't need to like explain everything, which is also very, challenging. And sometimes what I tell people to do, even going to a new doctor, they're like, I don't want to explain my story so long, I don't want to explain it again. I say, either put it all in like a Google Doc that you can send to them if you feel like it's like HIPAA safe, or make a video and make one video and just send it to the doctors and be like, I'm not rehashing all of this, here's a video.
Yeah.
So that's a tip I give, because people, when they have to relive it, it's like they're almost have to relive all of that trauma again. It's a lot,
Yeah, a lot. It sucks as well. Like, also,
Yeah.
every doctor is like, you can kind of imagine what you're going to be met with usually,
Yes.
right? Be like, oh, okay, it's not usually typically very warm, and there's so much lived experience that you don't want to get into with everyone all the time. Yeah, I like
Or
those tips.
yeah, or they look at you like a victim or something like that. And I'd also like, I don't want to be looked at like a victim. It's been a lot, but I'm okay. And I like that you said too, like certain spaces, you don't even want to get into that with certain people, because like you just want to like, I don't know, talk about the weather or go surfing, and not have someone look at you and be like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? And there is a time and space for that. And I know it comes from a place of like care and love, but sometimes you don't want to talk about it.
Right. I think absolutely one of the biggest realizations for me is like, I have this thing that's a really big part of my experience, the endo thing, PMDD, and I want to build a really rich life around it, next to it. And those things don't always have to like blend together. I have friendships now, and they don't even really know that side of me or that part of my story, and I'm totally great with that. I think that's also very healthy for me to have friendships and connections where that's not at the center of like that they see me in that way, that's kind of how they've labeled me, like, oh, Kels has, this health condition and this is like a big part of her experience. Like, I want to be seen for other things too.
Yeah, that's so well said. Really beautifully said. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So you said you've led some endo support groups and things like that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, just always really incredible to get a bunch of women around that are at various parts of their journeys, and just like people, like the questions you asked me of what's been helpful, and even just those little things of like women find out about cramp bark for the first time and they're like super excited to try it out, or they come back a month later and they're like, oh wow, this certain tea helped me so much. And it's just kind of that like underground knowledge that we're all, in it together, sharing, because those things can be really helpful. Or learning about things like fascial rolling on your belly, just sharing tips and ideas. And sometimes people show up and they've just had a surgery a few weeks ago, and so we're really there for them. And yeah, it's just beautiful to hear women share their experience and learn from each other.
I agree. Yeah. What heating pad do you use for travel? And there's just it's nice to be able to like find some tips and tricks, so you don't have to, like you said, we're kind of testing all of the things. So if
Oh my
someone can
gosh,
give us
yeah.
like a head start, it's really nice. But
Yeah.
it might not work for us either. Like I just feel like everything's so different on everyone. So like certain things work for certain people, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, I think all of these tips and tricks that you've provided are very helpful. Are there other things that you want to share with the audience?
Other things I want to share. Yeah, I mean, probably just, something that I focus on like in therapy with women that have, intense hormonal fluctuations, which lead to something like PMDD, or even like a BPD diagnosis, borderline diagnosis, or even bipolar. Like women are often overdiagnosed with bipolar disorder because we do have pretty different experiences. That's often misdiagnosed when PMDD should actually be the diagnosis. But like women that are experiencing intense hormonal shifts, like I think that how our partners show up for us, like whatever kind of relationship style you have, or if you're in a partnership, I think inviting our partners into supporting us and how they might be able to support us in our experiences, and having collaborative conversations there. If our partners aren't really willing to do that with us, and they're meeting us in a certain way with like judgment or lack of support, or just kind of like, yeah, I of course see a little bit of everything. Like I think that's just really important to recognize how the people in our lives, like especially our intimate partners, are meeting us. And like relational accountability is huge. How can our partners be accountable to us in these experiences that we go through? How are they going to be a team player with us? So I think I wanted to share that of like, if partners aren't meeting us in a certain way, it's like, we need to look at that, try to work on that if we can, because that's a huge part of our stress and our experience and nervous system and all of that.
Yeah, and you've talked about nervous system a couple times, and I know that like obviously stress and inflammation. You've done, it sounds like, some good things too to help kind of calm your nervous system. Do you have any other like maybe tips for the audience of things that maybe they could try, or maybe they've never tried anything to start working on that? Maybe a first line of defense to help kind of calm
Sure.
the nervous system.
Yeah. I will say, like, everyone has to find their own things. For me, it's surfing, being out in the ocean, or having a gentle walk if I'm in my luteal phase, down to the beach in the morning. Meditation is, of course, great if that's accessible and you like that. Or someone else might get the same benefits from really mindfully cooking or speaking on the phone with a friend. I think it's just depends on everyone. Like, I have really simple things, like I love to be barefoot or to sit on the floor and ground myself, kind of thing. Or if it's the weekend, I love to lay in bed a bit longer and read my book in bed and have some tea, something like that. Calling with a friend. There's also certain exercises you can do if you're like in a lot of pain that can kind of trick your nervous system. You can put a heating pad behind the back of your neck when you're laying down if you're feeling nauseous or just overwhelmed. Laying on that for a few minutes. You can like stimulate your vagus nerve by like putting your hands in your ears and pulling down pretty hard. Cold water on the wrists for the vagus nerve. You have like VU exercises as well that you can do. Yeah, I think we all know when we're overstimulated and our nervous systems are so we just got to find ways of what's going to work for us. And those are pretty individualized. You have like those frontline things, like I've mentioned some of them, but it's going to probably look different for all of us because we are all like so different and have different preferences.
Yeah. I know some people that will like color or draw or just
Right.
try to do something creative to like, maybe distract themselves. And that seems to help some people too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love to meditate, but I also, it's funny, I like to be barefoot too. Like I live in a winter climate. So like I'm like always have socks on. When it starts to get to the time where I don't have to wear socks, I'm like, I'm not wearing socks for 8 months, you know? And
Yeah.
there's just something about it. I don't know. I just feel better when I don't have to like have my feet trapped in something.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
And there's some like I know there's like devices now too that people you could look up if you're listening, everyone that like I know like electronic things that go on the neck or things that like stimulate. But there's also I just learned in yoga like ways that you can breathe and like hold one nostril and like there are ways like that to like calm the nervous system and stimulate the vagus nerve too.
Yes.
So
I love that. And
those
I
are
think,
yeah.
yeah, I want to add one more thing. Like now that we're talking about this, I tell my clients, like we can do all those things, right? We can do the yoga, we can do the meditation, we can do all the healthy eating. But like if there's big things in our life that we're not addressing, we can do all that stuff and it's probably not going to matter as much, right? If we're in like the wrong relationship or if we're in a really stressful job or if we're in a really bad living situation or we have a huge amount of financial stress, like those are the foundational things that we might want to attend to if we can, right? We don't want to be like just trying to focus on, like, okay, I'm going to meditate, but like actually I'm in the wrong relationship. But I just got to like regulate myself and then the relationship is going to be fine. Like sometimes we have to be really honest with ourselves about those big things that aren't working because those are going to be more like effective long term for nervous system regulation, if that makes sense.
100%. And yeah, thank you for saying that. Well, for people who are listening, how can they find you or if they're looking to talk to someone, what's a good way to start, especially if it's someone, like you said, PMDD or endo or PCOS or something. It is, I think, nice to find someone who gets it and maybe who's been through it and understands.
Right. Agreed. I mean, I offer, so for women living in California, I offer therapy online and in person in San Diego County. And then I do like women's health coaching as well for women who aren't based in California because that's just like a licensure restriction. So the people that I work with out of state, it's coaching and coaching is just a little bit more directive. And I give like a lot of tips, like the cramp bark, for example, and stuff like that, that can be really helpful that I don't typically do in therapy. I can, but just not as much of. So yeah, you can just find me kelseywilsontherapy.com. Kelsey, Kelsey, Wilson, Wilson. Therapy.com. That's how people can find me. And you can always like reach out too if you just have a question or like, hey, are you going to start another group soon? Or like, I heard you talk about this. Like, just I'm very open and I love to help people with this. So it's like really my way of giving back when I was like very lost and isolated and not knowing what to do about a potential endo diagnosis. So I'm very, very happy to talk to anyone and help in any way I can.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And don't worry, everyone, I will link Kelsey's website in the show notes. So if you're walking, driving, don't try to write that down. We got it. Just come back and click the link. I'll put it in there for you. Okay. Well, anything else, anything we missed or anything to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Just a lot of gratitude to you, Melissa, for what you're doing. And for all the listeners who are just like going through it, like I feel you. And yeah, like things can always get even just a little bit better. You just might need some support or to change a few things. One of my favorite things that my pelvic PT has told me is she said, we can't expect anything to change if we don't change anything. So it's like, if we make small changes, we're probably going to see some changes. But if we keep carrying on as is, struggling, suffering, probably not much is going to change. And so that's how we can tap into our agency as women and try to like move the needle a little bit. So
yeah, and you don't have to do it all at once. Like Kelsey said, you can start with a few things at a time, test them out and see what works best for you. And just remembering you're never alone. There's so many people with this illness, similar illnesses, chronic illness that are with you and understand how hard some of the days really can be.
Right.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well said.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Kelsey, thank you for coming on and sharing. We're so grateful that you're here. We're grateful for all those tips. Can't wait to check out the cramp bark. I've never heard of that, so that's super exciting. And if you are listening and this was helpful for you, please give us 5 stars wherever you're listening. We'd really appreciate that. It helps us get more people on the show and in turn just helps spread more awareness for endometriosis. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.